5. I think we're gonna hold another minute or two, hoping that we might have 6. We have 6 with the Zoom line.
Interesting. Okay, so I think if you. Let me make a share for my phone.
All connected?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe I'll need. I'm gonna test drive potentially sharing the documents.
Awesome.
System.
As you
Oh,
have
I've
to do
been
it
the
all.
same network.
Do that iPad.
We're just seeing if we wanted to share something. I don't have my computer with me, so I
Okay.
guess I have to share it through this, right?
Can we use this one?
No, could we, is this the,
Yeah,
oh, this is the. perfect.
office one.
Office one, beautiful. All right, great. So we'll be able to then join through here.
Correct. Why can I view? Why can I see you guys?
You can't?
No, there's nothing.
Video, there you go.
Or something?
Oh, we exist.
Okay. There we go.
All right. I think we're gonna roll, and actually, I'm not worried because I don't think we have a vote tonight. So this is Community Board 7 Youth Education Library Committee. I'm Kristen Berger, I'm one of the co-chairs, but Minna Ellis has it's not an excused absence, I'm already forgetting the word for it, but she has
Waiver.
a waiver, thank you, work obligations tonight. And Dan Gerstein will be joining us on Zoom because he's a sick child, so he has a waiver for that as well. Tonight, the main agenda item was to get a briefing from District 3, just to find out what's going on and what like the pace of the district is. And then we have 2 other agenda items that are coming from the committee, and we'll talk with Mariella about the Civics for All project and how CD7 can be involved in civics for youth in our district. And some issues that have come up for participatory budgeting, mostly around AC and HVAC for the schools. And I think that's it. Otherwise, whatever anyone else has for new business. So if you want to introduce yourself and show the deck, we'll get, and then tell us whether you want us to hold questions to the end or just kind of,
We can go throughout.
because we're not a huge
Yeah,
crowd
no,
tonight.
that's fine. And then Anthony is coming on at some point, I think, to talk about civics.
Wonderful.
Should we vote on the agenda to make it official?
Do we have the vote on the agenda?
Yeah, I thought we had to vote on the agenda. I mean, it's kind of unanimous, just.
Do we support this agenda?
Yes.
Yes.
It's Robert's rules.
These rules.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll share this. Sure, and I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Mariela Graham. I'm the Deputy Superintendent of District 3. Community boards are very near and dear to my heart. I served on a community board of Washington Heights and Inwood. So I appreciate all of your time and energy that goes into this kind of work. So there are a few things just to kind of give a briefing on what the district is working on, and I'll have Anthony add the civics piece at the end. So if you wanted this to be interactive, here is a math question. We have been starting all of our meetings with math questions just to make sure that there's like a public piece of engagement. So which fraction has a value equivalent to 3? And thinking about what's the answer, what grade level test do you think this connects to, and what could be challenging for kids?
It's maybe challenging for some adults, I know.
Right.
I think it's an excellent question.
I don't remember what grade level it could be.
I think first.
Second grade.
I would say.
I was gonna go 3rd.
Well, I
We've
think
got every
that
grade.
state tests started at 3rd grade, so
Yeah.
maybe that.
But I remember this from second grade.
Yeah.
Well, you were in a very advanced school.
So.
I was thinking of third. Oh,
Yeah, so it's third grade. It is the question that had the fewest number of students answer correctly in
Ah.
District 3. And also in the state and the city. Um, and so part of our math culture push and thinking about math, not just all of the conversations that are happening about NYC solves and math shifts and curriculum choices, but also just getting the general public to really just remember some of these things that may seem like they happened a very long time ago. And kind of bringing it back into the conversation. So all of our principals meeting, assistant principals meetings, district leadership team meetings, CEC meetings, all include a warm-up package. So, we talk about attendance. That's something that is definitely, that requires everybody's participation in. One of the things that we see here is like parent-teacher conferences always hurts us for attendance because they are half days. So on this calendar, November 6th was parent-teacher conferences in elementary schools. And so that day it dipped to 85%, where the day before it was 95 and the day after it was 93. And so thinking about childcare and the role that that plays in school attendance is something that we discuss a lot. Of course, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving probably forever be an issue until someone decides to tackle that on. And then in December, we start to see like weather factors also starting to kick in. We sometimes silently take bets about December 22nd and 23rd. And that even though the city has granted an extra day on the back end, right? So that we return on January 5th, kind of,
Instead of that one weird Friday. day.
Yeah. So they gave that dangling day, but somehow I'm sure that the 22nd, 23rd of December will be challenging. And so we've done a lot around attendance and just the importance of attendance and just the weird kind of interactions that happen. So it harms also the kids who do come to school, because if half the kids are missing, then the teacher's kind of like in flux about what to do, and it kind of, as the kids
can
get
move
older
on,
especially, there's
yeah.
like some level of resentment, like I came to school and still nothing's happening because other people didn't come to school, and so it gets a little bit tricky. I want to share a little bit about class size, because that's something that's been in the news a lot. The goal is that by September of 2028, all schools in New York City are meeting the class size law, which grades K through 4 is up to 20 kids, or K through 3 is 20 kids. 4 through 8 is 23 kids, and in high school is 25. And there's certain caveats about like phys ed and performance classes also. But last year, the city ended up sending principals an application that they said, if you have the space and you just need extra teachers, then we will give you extra funding for teachers to be able to meet the class size. So if there are 100 first graders or 100 kindergartners that you used to put them in 4 classes of 25, we'll give you funding for 1 extra teacher, so you can have 5 classes of 20 and then be in compliance with class size. And so that was a big success in a lot of ways to kind of make the first real push to kind of meeting the class size. This year, the difference is that it's a survey. So schools aren't opting to apply or not apply, but now the city really wants to get a baseline of where all the schools are in terms of class size. And so here in District 3, we have 28 schools. We have 8 schools that are already at 100% compliance. Then we have 7 schools who say, if you give us some more resources, usually in the form of funding for teachers, we have the space that we can do it. In some number of cases, the resources referenced could be converting, like a dance room into a classroom, right? So they might need some sort of like financial space help to change the space utilization of a classroom in order to meet it. Then we have 9 schools that say that there's no way that they can get to 100%, but we can make some progress. And then there are 4 schools that says that they cannot make any more progress, and that will, in the next year or so become the real focus points, because if the principals are indicating that there will be space walkthroughs, and that's kind of where a lot of the considerations about what to do as a district, as opposed to what to do with one specific building and one specific school really starts to kind of come into play. And by fall of 2026, just because we had done so much work in Harlem and all sorts of like truncating some schools, expanding, reciting, we were glad to see that all of those schools. were-
Is the beginning of the tackling the responses going to be cut at like a B and above? Like, what will the intervention be? Where are the priorities?
So citywide, the city's looking at B, right? So they're
B,
probably
yeah.
starting to see, so how many teachers has like the city requested, right?
Sure.
And it's tricky because last year, I think a lot of people were like, is this for real? Like, if I say I need 5 teachers, you're just gonna give me like an extra $550,000 and be like, here, hire 5 more teachers, but the city did. And so now, I think what schools, I think, we have all schools participating and really kind of delving into the details of their school, but also what the financial cost to that will be, will be really interesting to
Sure.
look at. So one of the things that happened in our district, for example, is like Booker T requested extra teachers and they also requested an extra assistant principal, because if you're going to have more teachers and more classes,
You need
we also
more
need more
administration.
supervision. And some other schools were like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. And it's true, if you're adding so many more teachers and so many more like spaces that get used and, how you cover visibility and supervision in those areas, it requires some of those.
So question, so
Yeah.
C and D, I'm assuming a lot of the issues are related to teachers. For the most part, and then the second part of that question is, seems to me with a lot of teachers retiring
Mhm,
or leaving the profession,
mhm.
is there enough of a pipeline to meet that demand to fill the needs for C and D?
Yeah, so C and D are really more about space.
Okay,
Physical space.
okay, that's why I was asking.
It's more about
between-
space, but yes, but
Yes.
DOE central and probably all educators are worried about where are all of these teachers going to come from. So on some level, they're like, I just need funding for more teachers. One of the reasons that Superintendent Samuels has really been working a lot on class size is because the entire city is going to have to hire more
A hiring
teachers.
spree all
Right.
at once.
We would rather
Right.
have like first pick of hiring more teachers
Mhm.
than waiting till 2028
Yes.
and then trying to hire teachers.
Right.
What happens to a school if it does not comply and it doesn't make progress? Is there a penalty or are they forced to split up?
Yeah, I think it's to be seen. So this law, right, was passed, I think we're halfway, maybe 3 years ago. And it's only last spring that it really started to pick up steam where they said, here's the application, let's see how much, how much progress we can make. The city met the 60% goal for this year. I think District 3 is at 64%, 65%. Schools like PS 87 made a good amount of progress. I believe that they hired 11 teachers to get them to 55%, but that only got them to 55%. So I would say like that's one of the schools that is tricky. Some of it becomes like the elementary schools that are already in standalone buildings, right? So PS 166 is another one that is probably a little
That's
bit.
their max footprint if they're in a
Right.
standalone building.
Right, so it's not even about like negotiating space with like a charter school or some other entity. It really is like, we already have the whole building.
Right.
And there are a couple of pieces that the city has really tried to make sure don't get lost in kind of the math of this. So one is, they don't want to reduce enrollment, right? So we're not going to say, so PS9, for example, like if they're supposed to take 100 kids in kindergarten and have them over 5 classes, don't take 80 so that you can say 4 and then, right? Like the city's losing huge amounts of students, right? And kind of keeping enrollments is
But I would think some enrollment at some level is eventually gonna come down to zoning. Because if a building like 166 is
Mhm.
at maximum capacity for that building,
Yeah,
they cannot keep admitting the same number.
right. Every school in the district takes kids from out of their zone. almost significantly. I would say 87 is probably the one that has the highest zone enrollment. But all of the other schools, you know, and that's why it's a little bit of like a domino effect. It's like there are students who are probably zoned for PS 75 who come down to PS 9.
Depending on the programming that's available. Like,
Right.
there's a lot of G and T programs that they
Right,
go from every, every.
Yeah,
There are
place.
not that many G&T programs.
At one, at
Right.
166 there are.
166.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
but only at one.
actually,
Yeah,
I-
there's not one at 9.
just for
No, I
everybody's,
know, but
for
also
everybody's benefit.
87, the Anderson School,
The
comes
Anderson
from the
School
whole-
is
yeah,
citywide,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's not our
Yeah,
district school.
those
Yeah.
of you,
We don't have any, we
I
don't
mean,
in
still considered our
87, yeah,
school.
I think it would still be in our district for
yeah,
that, yeah.
Anderson is,
yeah,
But
but
it's not under your superintendent's office.
it is.
Oh, it is now.
Yeah.
Nice.
by the way, for everybody's benefit, who doesn't know me that well. Day one, I was elected co-president of the PS9 PTA. Day three, they closed the G&T program. Day 5 and 6, there were people who wanted to lynch me.
But the G&T programs, I think, are going to be a very different conversation under this administration, but the bigger issue is just straight enrollment. So schools do have some leverage if they're enrolling students who are out of their zone, right? Because by chancellor's regs, they're not, if they're filled with in-zone students, they're not obliged to
Yeah.
take out-of-zone students.
Right.
I'd like to
The
make,
ul-
a
tricky
kind of sorry. I'd like to make an observation. It's probably futile and unrealistic, but if there are schools that are overcrowded because they can't meet the class size requirements, there are dozens of charter schools that are under enrolled and are in danger of going out of business for that reason. And it's a crazy system that requires over enrolled schools to keep their students so they get money. When there are many, many under enrolled schools with, perfectly good academic credentials. So, I mean, I don't know that anything's ever gonna be done about that, but I just wanted to get it off my chest.
Thanks, Richard. And can you remind us when, because I see this notice that says by fall 2026, all schools will be in compliance in Harlem. But what's the requirement citywide? Again, what's the date for 100%?
2028,
2028. So it's not that far away.
right,
Yeah.
right. Yes, so. So the superintendent teams have reviewed all of the surveys and now it moves on to DOE Central and the unions review it and all of that, but. We're hopeful, like this is a earlier timeline than last year, right, so that schools can prepare better for finding out if they're getting additional funding for the city to be able to prepare. Especially for those like C and D survey schools that say like, we can't make any more progress, and that's kind of, they need to be able to. At first, at least have like an inventory of which schools those are.
So, and then are they offering supports or they haven't figured out what the answer is for C and D schools yet?
Yeah, I don't know that there is yet, or I at least have not heard,
Right.
of like a citywide strategy. For what to do with the C and D schools. I think we're taking a good first step to say which ones are the C and D schools. So I wanted to just share a little bit about our working groups, and I think that when Superintendent Samuels has been here, he's kind of shared a little bit about this, last year.
Like the math curriculum?
No, so the working groups have been geographic, so, in 2022. No, in 2023. In 2023, we started with Harlem to really start to address issues of enrollment, in those schools, and that work is what led to the moving of Mott Hall, the truncation of the middle school of 185, the truncation of, all of those changes that happened in Harlem started in a working group that includes the principal, the UFD chapter leader, the PTA president, and the parent coordinator. And the idea being that like, we can, and so I kind of put here a little bit of like the general approach that has happened this year. So there's Harlem, and then we started the mid-district. The mid-district is between 79 and 110th Street. It has about 13 schools, if I recall. And the southern district is, below 79. And so this year, in the Southern District Working Group, we started off the year by looking at data. We looked at enrollment trends, zone retention, zone enrollment. Like the difference being zone retention is of all of the kindergarten age kids in a neighborhood, how many of them actually enroll into their zone school? And zone enrollments being, if you look at all of the kindergartners, how many of them live in the zone, right? So kind of like the inverse. We looked at space within schools, and then space within buildings. We looked at early childhood data. I remember once we were here, we talked about 1972 Broadway, so that is also part of this conversation, especially the Southern District. We've looked at state test scores, state accountability status, teacher turnover. We looked at a whole lot of data. And from there, we identified some of the challenges that exist in the schools. And we come up with ideas. So there were two main challenges that came out of the Southern District Working Group, one of them around early childhood and how to best utilize 1972 Broadway. And the second challenge was really about the performance of PS 191. And so with those two being the challenges, then with this group, we brainstormed ideas and shared possible ideas and possible solutions. And then this last part, which was in November, we shared these ideas with the Office of District Planning, and they were able to present us with like, what is the feasibility of some of these ideas? So, this is the 1972 Broadway piece. So these 4 boxes represent each of the floors in that building, right? So on the first floor, the bottom is entrance and security. Then on the second floor, there are 7 classrooms, main office, nurse's office, and currently District 75 has kindergarten classes there. Then the third floor is where we will be putting some early childhood classes for the fall of 2026. And then the fourth floor has a teacher's room and 2 play areas, one that will be for District 75 and one that will be for District 3. And so we have thought about which classes could be moved there in relation to class size. So for example, PS 452 has 6 early childhood classes, 3 3K and 3 pre-K. They are all about 100% used. All the seats are taken. They are at like 88% class size. So would moving a couple of classes help them get to 100? We're talking about what does that mean for articulation into kindergarten? We're really thinking about making 1972 an annex of 452 because families in some of these working group sessions, one of the things that parents have brought up is that they want their children to still be part of an elementary school. Like they don't necessarily want to be part of like an early childhood center, right? They want to be in early childhood, but still be able to possibly participate in some of the other programming of an elementary school. 191 has 3 3K and 2 pre-K, but the 3K, one of them is very under enrolled. And so we're also thinking maybe to move some classes out of there, possibly. Or some in parts because, well, we'll get to the performance challenges, 191, but
But I would say, what's their class size at 191, if they're not?
their pre-K, the pre-K is mostly utilized. I would say it's not 100, but it's probably in the 90s, but their 3K could probably easily be really just 2 full classes. And so that's kind of where we are on 1972. And then we are also exploring, PS 87 has 1 pre-K class. So it's 18 seats, and then they have 5 kindergarten sections. And so that pre-K class, is already fully enrolled with in-zone siblings. And still there's extra in-zone
Yeah.
siblings. But they, with their addition of 10, 11 teachers, they still are only at 55% class size, and so even one room would.
Is not gonna, like,
It'll
it
make
helps,
some
but it
difference,
won't
but it
solve
won't
it.
get to 100,
Yeah.
right? But there's a conversation there, about that, and then also just in terms of like. that ends up being like this lottery that a lot of families have to tackle, you know. Is it worth moving it and just kind of like eliminating a little
That
bit of,
whole drama
Yes.
that exists around the one classroom.
yes,
We had that problem for years at 9,
Yeah,
and what we used to have a half day, pre-K, and then
get more,
they said,
so
no,
it's
you
two
can't.
half days.
You
but
can't have,
do
right, so we
that
had two
anymore.
sections, of
Yeah.
half day, and they said, no, you can't do that.
Mhm.
So we went from 36 to 18.
yeah,
That was like, no chance, was the same thing, Sibs only. for college
yes,
students.
and then probably have extra zone siblings that still don't get in, right, I mean.
Yeah,
So that's that piece. The other part that kind of comes in connected to the performance challenges of 191 is to truncate the middle school. So to remove grades 6, 7, and 8. So that, you know, right now they are serving grades 3K to 8, so they're going 11 grade span. Their proficiency rating last year was, I think, 16% and 19%. It is, you know, I didn't look at the most recent data, but up until last year, it was the lowest performing K-8 school in the city.
Wait, sorry, I missed that.
191.
Oh, well,
And-
this has always been,
Yeah.
And so we're thinking that to really give it a chance to be able to focus on,
One section.
On one
yeah, One
section.
group.
yeah. So there is an idea that we're working through and getting feedback on, and we met with the SLT yesterday. Is the idea of truncating the middle school.
What's their kind of enrollment in 6 through 8
I believe it's 123.
across all 3 grades?
Yeah.
It's more than I imagined that, to be honest. It
You
was
know-
gonna be even less than that.
And 191 has really had a lot of challenges, right? So their enrollment has fluctuated from like 550 to like 350, like within like a 200 range, in the last 2 years. Because they took in a lot of the New Yorkers from the row, and so they've had a very unsteady enrollment.
Yeah.
So I'm missing the disconnection. So you said that they underperform
Mhm.
and the performance tests were 16 to 19%.
So I think it was 16% ELA and 19% math of students were proficient. Maybe it was,
And so
one was
how
ELA
does,
and one is math.
got it. So how does truncating and solve efficiency problem?
Mhm. Because,
I'm missing the connection.
yeah, I think, for a principal, so there's two pieces, I would say. Administratively, to have a principal supervise and be in charge of students as young as 3 who take naps and, you know, developmentally are, well, they're 3, and then up to kids who are 14 who, you know, have different needs is really a very large span. And because the middle school in particular is so small, you're really trying to, like, you don't have enough staff that's really specializing in one thing. You're taking a teacher, and there might be one teacher who does English language arts for 6, 7, and 8, right? Because there's really like very few students, whereas in a larger school, you're the 6th grade ELA teacher. I'm gonna become an expert in my curriculum and my material. I'm gonna really be like the anchor of the 6th grade team, but some of that really starts to disappear when you have a teacher teaching multiple grades and, oh, I need you to also teach drama in addition to English and 7th grade English, right? And a lot of that is.
Understood. So there's a mismatch between the need and the resources,
Mhm.
basically.
You said it much better, but yes. So this is where it gets a little bit tricky, but the performance challenges of 191 is over here, and for that reason, we are considering the idea in the scenario of truncating their middle school. At the same time, it presents, like, this is where the district kind of comes in. It presents this opportunity because PS9 shares a building with Center School, and PS9 is at like 43% compliance, I think, for class size. And they added, I think, 6 teachers this past year, but they are also coming up upon space constraints.
you're aware that when Center moved into the building, they were supposed to give classrooms back to PS9 at a certain point, and then when the time came to do it, they didn't.
It's been like a long battle.
There's like, I know that there's
Live
one specific
strong.
classroom on the third floor that I think is like.
There were several classrooms on the third
Okay, by the time
floor.
I arrived.
But
there
so
was this
they're
one-
only 43% towards achieving classrooms, like they're way oversubscribed in center school. So you're saying?
Well, center, I think more, so there's two issues at play. One is that PS9 is the elementary zone school, and so
Yeah.
you're not gonna constrain
That's
Uh,
cool.
a zoned
That-
elementary school.
That's what happened to the G&T program, because there wasn't room for it.
Right, because a program is different than like the zoned,
Yeah,
like, school. And so center school is a middle school, and so.
it
you
has
know,
more flexibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
I mean, historically, when Center moved into 9,
Mhm.
they were
I've lost the sound. I don't know if anyone else has.
I did as well.
Yeah. Okay. It's back. Think. Maybe not.
No.
The people on Zoom can hear each other, but we can't hear the board ops.
Give us a few minutes. We are unplugging and replugging everything in hopes that the sound will come back. So I apologize for that.
That's promising.
I'm very realistic.
Oh,
We
okay,
hear you, we hear you.
Perfect.
there we go. Look at that.
Okay, great, perfect.
We did just need to unplug and replug everything. It works every time.
Right.
All right.
Camera should be back.
So the idea would be to then, one of the things that we're floating around is having center school go into the 191 building. Or where PS 191 is, and then PS 9 would be able to meet class size. One center school would also have access to that building, which
It's very nice.
is very nice. And, you know, there would obviously be some adjustments because it's a move, right?
And center would continue to have the same enrollment it has being fit for eighth?
Mhm.
Okay.
So it would be one of the things, that the staff had really put forth is something that they felt very strongly about was being co-located with an elementary school. That it was really important to them for their programming purposes, you know, to be co-located with an elementary school, understanding that the reason that they had to move from 199 was related to being co-located with an elementary school where the zone elementary school takes priority when it comes to enrollment.
Right.
And
And then the
that is
same
why
thing
they're
with
there
nine
in this
again.
situation at 9.
Yeah.
But they were very insistent that part of their model is being able to kind of be co-located with an elementary school. And so that brings us to co-locating with 191. And so that's where we are on. some of-
That's interesting because they don't interact with, both of us had children at PS 9 and center school did not interact
Well,
with the
some-
elementary school. Do you have an elementary school?
I had a kindergarten there years ago.
Okay.
Yeah,
At- No,
at 9.
I did too. This is my first year out of the district since about 2009.
But I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what they're saying is their preference, but I'm surprised because they don't seem to do.
Right.
Like many co-located,
Yes.
it's not a bad
Right, it's not like the
co-location
eighth graders
relationship,
read
but
to
they're not
kindergarten
like,
or something.
yeah.
Yeah.
Interacting.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, 199 does not have any early childhood?
No.
Okay, that's why they're not a part of the conversation.
And so what we're up to is meeting with SLTs, gathering more input, continuing to refine some of these ideas. And the next step is possibly that there would be some sort of formal proposal process, right? But it's still a possibility. It's not yet been organized, but that's just kind of like the pathway and like the timeline.
If the communities from both of those schools wanted to move ahead with it, what timeframe are they hoping for? September?
Yes.
Or- Yeah.
All right, so mid-district.
Yeah.
Between 79 and 110. The same kind of process, looking at very similar things, but some of the data is a little bit different. So we looked at like middle school application numbers. Oh, no.
No, the owls. Well, they can still hear.
We've lost audio again.
No, I can't hear you.
You
I
can,
hear you because I'm in my office,
Right, but we can't hear the board.
I'm gonna go into the conference room. Give me a sec.
They have school off.
It's like he's waking up.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, it's the holidays. I'm on
holidays,
my
I'm
Christmas
done.
break, my
Exactly.
friend. What are we doing?
I can relate.
Yeah, I think we have to, otherwise we can't be here forever.
Yeah.
So in the mid district, the middle, we're looking at middle school, so on like, what are some of the challenges that were identified? The Joan of Arc building is a building that kind of came up.
Mhm.
And the reason it came up is, well, there's a couple of reasons. One is, so there's two standalone, middle schools, right? Community Action School and Lafayette Academy, and then Manhattan School for Children, K-8 is there also. And so there are a few things that have come up. One is, when it came to the class size piece, Community Action was able to meet 100% of class size, in part because they are under enrolled. And so they were able to be like, oh, we need a couple more teachers, we have a lot of space, and so we can, meet 100% class size. Lafayette, on the other hand, whose enrollment has been increasing, they were like, oh, we actually cannot make any progress on class size because, there's more demand for our school, and somehow it feels a little bit awkward to be like, because our school is gaining in enrollment, now we are out of compliance with the law. And Manhattan School for Children's middle school is also small. I forget exactly the number, I can look it up after, but it's small. And it does, one of the effects of having these small middle schools, very similar to when we talked about enrollment issues about like when we merged West Side Collaborative and Lafayette a couple of years ago, is that programming starts to suffer. There's, nobody wants to be a very small school. For some of the similar reasons we talked about 191 having a small middle school, like you're stretching staff in ways that are not natural or beneficial to kids. Another piece of it is that Community Action also has like a very high concentration of, one of the things that they have said is that, but we serve like the students who are most vulnerable and have a lot of needs. But concentrating all of those needs in one school is not necessarily like better for children. And in fact, like one of the things that we feel is that it's actually, we can support students more when they are in environments that is really kind of bolstering all parts of child development, right? And so kind of putting all of the students who have so many needs together is not to their advantage. And that, coupled with the enrollment issue, coupled with what that means for programming options, those were kind of the challenges. So then we did a similar process. We brainstormed ideas with the folks in the working group. We identified possible solutions. We invited the Office of District Planning. And so we had presented several scenarios to the Office of District Planning. We had thought about merging all the middle schools into one middle school. So Community Action, the middle school grades of MSC and Lafayette into one school. What the Office of District Planning said is that wouldn't really get you any more space, right? Because in some ways.
You're the same
end up with
number.
Still same number of kids, and it's still going to be a little bit cumbersome. Another piece that we looked at is West Prep Academy in the building at Ascension. Could Community Action be merged with West Prep?
What did they
And-
say?
And there wasn't enough space, because even though West Prep has has the building, they have specialized programs, and the numbers just wouldn't fit. So that didn't work out either.
And
We-
that's, I'm pleased to hear that, because they also were kind of promised, like, this is your chance
Yeah,
to
they'd
thrive
have
and
a
fill
nervous-
that building,
West Park
right?
would have a
Like,
nervous breakdown at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
They've been
That's
really-
what did they said.
And then another option was to truncate the middle school of MSC. And merge community action and Lafayette. And when that was presented, this scenario, that had not been initially introduced, came up at that working group meeting. And it was the idea of closing out community action by phasing out one grade at a time. So that would mean, like, let's say this is what happened, it would mean that in fall of 26, they would not bring in a new sixth grade, they would just have seventh and eighth grade. And then in fall of 27, they would just have an eighth grade. And by June of 28, like that last eighth grade class would graduate, and then community action would no longer be a school. And Manhattan School for Children said, oh, that's an interesting idea that we would also prefer to explore. And so for MSC, it would be fall of 26, they would have grades K through 5, 7, and 8. And then the following year, they would have K through 5 and 8. And then in the fall of 20, what year, I'm up to 28, I think, they would just have a K to 5. And so, and the last time that we met as a working group, we talked about like pros, the cons, like where this is, but this is the scenario that we're kind of continuing to explore. And part of that was to kind of honor parents' choices who had decided to enroll in that school and to
I
finish
didn't
out
matriculate, yeah.
that piece. We also talked about how like, all of the attrition that might happen both in students and staff in those interim years of a phase out. And for a long time, the DOE used to do phase outs, then they kind of stopped for a long time. Someone from the Office of District Planning said that actually last year they did approve one phase out, I don't know where, but. The superintendent has said that this situation is a little bit different. Because there would still be, like Lafayette would still be there as a middle school, so there are still middle school aged children in the building. They could try to merge resources to be able to still provide those students who choose to remain in the schools, like some kind of like, fuller experience, because Lafayette would still be there as a presumably larger middle school.
Yeah, that was my first question, is like how they could share resources, because I know that at least for the last 6 years, they've said phasing out is a terrible idea. Like Office of District Planning has given us no doubt about their feeling that it was bad for the students and bad for the school to phase out.
Yeah.
Which as a parent, I have to say, phase out always was more appealing to me, because it's much more brutal to be like, I'm moving my kid. But their argument was that, you do have this drop off in enrollment, both of staff and students, but more so just that you can't provide the support when you have just, let's say, just a free floating eighth grade,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
that is already under enrolled. So like the 42 kids in that building, how are they getting all of the academic support they're supposed to have if the school only has a budget for an enrollment of 42? That's a very, very small school budget.
Yeah.
Like,
Right, and that's why I think one of the reasons the superintendent was willing to kind of, right, because it's the working group folks that kind of came up with this one, that was not one of the original ideas. But it's because Lafayette would still be there to be able to do some sort of sharing and,
Well, remember how the phase out of the middle school of 165 was done? You were very involved in that.
yeah, but that's because
And-
Mont
and it-
Hall like took them by hand.
That-
and
Yeah,
did it,
they were given the option of
Yeah.
going into Mott Hall or any place else.
Mhm.
And some of the parents said, no, we still want 165.
Yeah.
And you tell that story better than me.
Listen, Marlon Lowe is running a bigger school now with
Yeah.
great success. I give him, he is a model for how it can be done.
Mhm.
He absolutely is a principal who has done it and done it very successfully
Mhm.
as far as bringing in another school into his school,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And that they manage the relationship between those two schools extraordinarily well.
Mhm,
The other thing that helped, though, at the end of the day, was money.
mhm.
That they did get a lot more money. They were
Mhm.
able to qualify for Title I, sorry, even though their number had dropped, had changed,
Uh-huh,
but they kind of, anyhow,
yeah. I
money
mean,
helps.
Yeah, and I think the merger with Westside Collaborative in Lafayette, you know, was also
Yeah.
in the end, positive. So, sorry, I think this is like longer than I expected this to go, so I apologize, but so this is what's coming out of the Southern District.
Right.
or
So these two
mid-district.
changes, the mid-district and this,
Mid-district.
and the southern district one,
Yeah.
more the mid-district, because this is
Yeah.
like a big, kind of bigger changes.
Yeah.
How are parents involved in this decision making?
Mhm.
Like you've discussed the working groups, but then how does it get socialized beyond that? And how do parents and families have a voice in the process?
So for up till right now, it's been the working groups and the SLTs. So
Yeah.
last week we met with the SLTs of Community Action Lafayette and it's Manhattan School for Children. And the next step is if we're moving towards like an actual proposal, then there will be community meetings that are open to all families and just the community in general. But, you know, we've slowly kind of gone through this. We just wanted to first make sure that we also had, you know, families involved even in like the identifying the problem, identifying possible solutions before just saying, so this is the solution we think we found, now tell us what you think. But that would presumably be this next part would be like the community meetings, you know, would there be the formal educational impact statement released, would there be the joint public hearing, leading up to,
And
but.
sometimes this happens and sometimes it doesn't, that there really is feedback taken on board before the joint public hearings
Mhm.
or even after.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes the community and families feel like whatever's presented at the joint public hearing is a done deal, like that's finished. And the whole point of hearing from community is that that shouldn't be finished
Yeah.
at that point. This is the proposal at that point. When you hear, because that's usually the point where parents realize like, oh, this is really happening,
Mhm.
people come out, it's fiery. But they're also giving really good ideas, so. As a parent advocate, I always want to hear that there's still the opportunity to take on board some of the ideas that come out of the joint public hearing, not simply a like. Check the box, we listened to the public,
Yeah.
like that's a real challenging thing.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I think that the structure that we put in is just to create even more opportunities and even earlier in the process. I agree that until there's an actual vote, there's always room for adjusting,
Yeah,
and I like to hear that in part because it is what makes this whole thing messy, right? If it were like, here it is and here's a vote, it would be very neat. But part of having community engagement is that we have to be flexible enough to really assess any possible changes to wrap them in and then see how we move forward from there.
Who is actually a part of the working group?
Yeah, it is the principals, the UFT chapter leaders, the PTA president or a
Okay, good. So there
designee.
is a
Mhm, and the parent
parental
coordinator.
representative with a seat at the table.
Yes, yep. And then the last piece, is just talking about math. So we can start and end with math. So last night we had our, feedback session. So this is just kind of the calendar, what we've done. In terms of like community engagement, we had each of the 3 vetted curricula come and present to families on Zoom. We spaced them out. There was like November 19th, November 24th, December 10th, each of the 3. And then we recorded them all. We sent them to all of the families. And then last night we had our feedback session. So families could either have joined each of those or watched the recording of them on double speed and gotten some gist of it. And then last night we had about, I want to say maybe 60 families, 60 people attend. We went through an overview, people from the central office presented on why this curricula, on the general math shifts. These are the 3 curricula: Amplified, Desmos, Illustrative Math, and iReady. And so we're like sifting through some of the feedback, but we gave everyone an opportunity to also just meet in breakout groups, share their concerns, their thoughts. And then we also took like a vote right? So if you had to choose one of these three curriculum now, what would it be? And all of that will inform the superintendent's decision for adopting a math curriculum for fall of 26.
And I assume there's a similar process with principals as well.
So the principals, they attended the principals meeting. We also did one with teachers during Monday PD time. We also had them weigh in. All right, that's everything.
Okay,
And then I can stop sharing and then
yeah,
if you have any other questions.
and then maybe
Anthony-
we'll magically be better. Are we good on this?
It's working so far.
All right, we were. Yeah, let's see if there are any questions. This is a lot of changes, and this is all aimed for this September.
I mean, we are on track for that to be the case. So if we work backwards from like the timeline of any kind of building utilization proposal, I would say the latest that we could have like a PEP vote would be like March, April. And then, you know, you can say like how many days before you have to have the
Yeah.
public hearing and release all of those things. So technically, we still have time, but it's all subject to feedback and kind of what comes out of these steps of the process. If it's like we should hold off, we could think about that. If it's like, you know, things that need to be tweaked, but we are on
Are
schedule.
we good online?
Yeah, we're good. I just noticed that the camera's not on for the phone.
Oh, okay, so,
This isn't actually any more, this is actually less disruptive than that one in the early part, the early teens. Because that's also when West Prep moved. And Center moved
Yeah,
and 452 was.
there's pretty much
created.
never a single move because there's always a knock-on effect from
Yeah.
any school move
Yeah.
right? Do you guys online have any questions? Because we've sort of been chiming in as we were going in person here. I feel like I'm, am I talking to the ether? There are people online, yes?
No, I think it's working.
Okay.
Is our speakers maybe not working? No, they would show up in the corner. No, I think the answer is probably no.
all right, and then Anthony is on, so he can speak to, he said.
Okay,
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm happy to go. My name is Anthony Johnson. I'm also from Superintendent Samuel's office. Thanks for having me today. My official title is OPE lead. That's the Office of Policy and Evaluation lead. But I'm also the civics lead within the district, and Jesse reached out a while back just to kind of develop a partnership between the schools and the community board. And in my understanding, really just wants to kind of get a direct line to students and engaging students in civic processes. So I think that's something that I wanted to come and talk a little bit about some of the work we've done with Civics for All over the course of the last couple years. So Civics for All is NYC Public Schools central initiative that partners with different districts throughout the city. And District 3 is one of the partner districts. One of some of the information I'm just going to share is reflective of the mindset that we're going over with teachers and schools and how we want civic education to look throughout the district and throughout the city. But one of the premises is that, high quality civics education is about knowledge, skills, and mindsets through actions and experiences. More so than just, knowing the three branches of government. I think there was an idea that was what civic education used to be. And really the Civics for All initiative is about guiding students through specific projects that will actually have impact within the community. So I think definitely linking with the community board is a positive step in that direction. Mariella, I think you have control of the deck. Yeah, and one of the goals of the Civics for All initiative is to reduce the civic empowerment gap, and the civic empowerment gap is sort of a, you know, there are certain communities, generally speaking, economically disadvantaged or communities of color that don't have access or have traditionally not had access to civic education. And Civics for All, aims to bring civic education to all communities, and um, narrowing the civic empowerment gap as a result. I think by the time a student leaves New York City public schools, they're ready to kind of participate in civic life. They'll be 18 thereabouts and of voting age, as one indicator of participating in civic life. So graduating students that are fully capable of participating in these processes, I think is a major priority. The full implementation of the civics initiative includes all students in the district getting 10 civics lessons each year or projects. There's a Civics for All curriculum that's used in order to kind of it's related to the social studies curriculum, but there are specific civic lessons and civic curricula within the social studies curriculum that all students will receive each year. All students completing a take action project at least once per grade band. So at least once between K to 2, 3 to 5, and 6 to 8. Every student presenting a project soapbox speech each year, participatory budgeting taking place in each school. And again, this participatory budgeting that's discussed here is a process through Civics for All. Schools are also doing participatory budgeting through other channels, but the Civics for All office also funds participatory budgeting. I think the schools get about $2,000 through the process, so it's not as robust as some of the other channels, but it is an opportunity for for schools to exercise that kind of democratic process. Democratic classroom practices, Civics Week, and then the District 3 Civics for All Share Fair, which we had last year at the New York Historical, and we will again this year. It's kind of a big celebration of the civic work that has happened throughout the year. Where we are on the continuum towards full implementation is we have kind of 7 schools that were considered the all-in schools. They took on some extra responsibility during our first year of implementation. And they're a little bit ahead of all the rest of the schools, but basically all the schools are strengthening democratic classroom practices. Everyone's celebrating Civics Week, continuing to support the civic lead. And this slide was originally presented to civic leads. That's a teacher leader within each school who's leading civics work in the school. Every student in one grade level is doing the Project Soapbox curriculum, and every student in one grade level teaching a minimum, or every student is receiving a minimum of 10 Civics for All lessons throughout the year, and everyone sharing their work at the Share Fair. The all-in schools, rather than implementing in one grade level, are implementing in 2 grade levels, and then the rest of the schools are implementing in 1 grade level this year. This just kind of shows the increased involvement with the civics initiative over the course of the years. Civics for All began as fully optional. So schools were signing up to be part of Civics for All and get the support from Central to implement these initiatives. So in 2023, District 3 had no schools who were involved in Civics for All. And then by the beginning of school year 2024, last year, we became a Civics for All district, right? So within last year, 10% of our schools were doing participatory budgeting through Civics for All, and 10% were sending students to Soapbox NYC, which is a citywide competition where students present their soapbox speeches to a citywide audience. This year, that number has increased to 36% doing participatory budgeting and 54% sending students to the Soapbox NYC competition. So, and this is in addition to all students, participating within the school at the school level project Soapbox. So, we're increasing the involvement within the civics initiative year over year. This is just an example. This is what is meant by democratic classroom practices. It's kind of a mindset of the teacher and a way of organizing the class to promote student voice. Participatory budgeting, minimum expectations. And again, this is Civics for All, participatory budgeting. And these are the expectations that schools are going to meet if they are participating in that initiative. Yeah, and we're monitoring Project Soapbox progress. There's a lot of work happening throughout the district in terms of school-wide celebrations. I was just at Manhattan School for Children today. They had parents in, filled up the auditorium with students delivering their speeches. Even the students who weren't going on to the main stage of the Soapbox NYC competition had an opportunity to present to the school community their ideas. And within the Project Soapbox format, there is an action step that's suggested by the student, where they're suggesting steps that can be taken within the community to address the issue that they've identified. Take action project. So again, this is like the next step. By next year, schools will be participating in the Take Action project. But let's say if a student is giving a Project Soapbox speech and they've identified an issue in the community and they've identified, they've learned about who they should talk to in order to help address it. Like, it's not necessarily a letter to the president, but it is communication with the community board. And so like learning the ins and outs of who to talk to, how to make things happen. The Take Action project is the next step, where they are actually doing the project within the community and, fixing what they feel needs to be fixed. And this is something we do have a school piloting. PS 75 is piloting Take Action this year. And there'll be more implementation throughout the district next year. And then another initiative we've begun this year is teacher leaders. So every school has a civic lead, but the teacher leader is a citywide program. So we have 2 teacher leaders from PS 163 and from the Anderson School. They are going to be, they're going through a citywide teacher leadership program to kind of further bring civic education through the district. They just actually, I think they did their first citywide PL yesterday. And they're going to develop a project that's going to enhance civic learning throughout the district. And that's an initiative that we just started this year as well. So that's a short overview of what's happening with Civics for All in District 3. I know that a few schools have been in touch with Jesse so far about kind of how to connect their student councils or some body within the school to the community board. And I think that partnership, I think, is an amazing one, and I'm here to help facilitate that.
Thank you, Anthony. That was really useful. I was very happy to get to meet with Anthony and Minna and Jesse probably about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago.
Mhm.
And I want to give Jessie some credit here because she has come up with an amazing project, which is like a youth civics engagement initiative for the whole of Community Board 7. But
Mhm.
because we're the Youth Education Libraries Committee, I think it's gonna kind of start with us, but it will reside with the board. So Jesse, do you wanna, I want you to kind of get all the accolades here and introduce the project to us a little bit, and then we can share the screen and we'll put up the document about like aims and how we could possibly do that.
Well, I'll start with recently we had a transition in our leadership. And one of the projects was kind of like what's my passion and what I love. And I've been very heavily involved with the school and District 3. We have amazing superintendent's office team. You can hear me?
We had the
I hear
technical
you.
snafu. We're now on the wrong computer because we try to share from this computer
Okay,
and
yeah,
now no one can see or hear.
I could, if
so-
anything, you want me to share my end?
Jesse can take
We,
over.
we should switch back to,
I could share my end.